All right, strap in, everyone. We're taking a deep dive into DeepSeek today.
DeepSeek, yeah.
This Chinese AI company seems like they're everywhere. I mean, every time I turn around, there's another headline about some crazy new thing they're doing.
Yeah.
But, today we're going beyond all the hype, right? We actually got this report, really digs into their connections, like who they're working with, who's funding them, and, what it all means for China's whole game plan in tech.
Yeah, and what I find really interesting about this whole DeepSeek thing is it's not just about one company. It's like this window into like how business and government kind of get all mixed up,
Right.
Especially when you're talking about like cutting edge tech that could be, well, strategically important, let's say.
Totally. And this report, it lays out this whole web of partnerships DeepSeek's got going on. Investors, companies giving them the tech they need, even collaborators from completely different industries. It's kind of like trying to untangle like a giant headphone cord or something.
Yeah, it's a real mess for sure. But I mean, that's the fun part too. Like you start looking at these connections and you see patterns.
Oh, interesting.
It's almost like you're putting a puzzle together. Each piece, it tells you a little bit more about where DeepSeek came from and where they might be going and what that means for, the whole global AI landscape.
Okay, so let's start putting this puzzle together.
Mm.
One of the first things that kind of jumped out at me in this report was this company, Merit Interactive.
Oh, yeah.
Also goes by the name High Flyer Quant. Sounds like a band name or something, right?
Right.
They're a major shareholder in DeepSeek, and the report mentions that there are all these rumors that they've been like hoarding GPUs. You know those specialized chips that are basically like steroids for AI, right?
Oh, yeah. The GPU thing. That's a big one. You have to understand, GPUs, those are like the backbone of AI. They're what make it possible to train those super complex algorithms and then actually run them. Everybody wants them. And if you can get your hands on a bunch of them, well, that gives you a serious advantage in the AI game.
So, I mean, what does it mean that this Merit Interactive is seemingly like trying to corner the market on these things? Is that just like a smart business move, or is there like a bigger strategy at play here?
I mean, it's definitely a power move, especially when you consider that the US has been like trying to stop those chips from getting to China. It makes you think that DeepSeek and whoever's backing them, they're thinking long term.
Like prepping for a future where those chips might be even harder to come by.
Exactly.
So they're playing the long game. But why? What's the big picture here?
Well, that's where it gets really juicy. The report also talks about DeepSeek's connections to companies like Sugon and Inspur. Those are the heavy hitters in, high performance computing, HPC. The thing is, these companies are super tight with the Chinese government. They work on a lot of government projects, including, some that could have military uses.
Wait, so DeepSeek is linked to companies that work with the Chinese government, and they're stockpiling basically the fuel that AI runs on. Okay, I'm starting to feel like we're in like a spy movie or something.
Yeah, but hold on. Let's not, jump to conclusions just yet. I mean, the report itself says that most of the evidence for direct government control over DeepSeek it's circumstantial. It's more about like understanding the whole situation and, considering what might be possible.
Okay, fair point. But this HPC connection, that definitely raises some red flags for me. What kind of possibilities are we even talking about here?
Well, just think about it. The tech that powers self-driving cars? Or, I don't know, maybe like revolutionizing healthcare?
Yeah.
That same tech can be flipped, used for military stuff. Think like autonomous weapons, super advanced surveillance, even like algorithms that can mess with public opinion.
Oh, wow. That's a little creepy. So even if DeepSeek is like developing AI that seems harmless, there's a chance it could be, I don't know, like repurposed for things that aren't so peaceful. Right?
Yeah, you got it. And in China, where they intentionally blur the lines between civilian research and military research, they call it military-civil fusion, by the way.
It's even harder to tell like where one ends and the other begins.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this whole thing gets more complex the deeper you go.
Yeah.
But we should also remember that DeepSeek collaborates with companies that aren't like directly involved in HPC or government stuff. The report mentions iFlyTech, for instance. They specialize in speech recognition tech. They're not building weapons, right?
Not directly, no, but they have worked on like public security contracts before, things like voice ID and analysis. Now imagine that expertise combined with DeepSeek's AI power. You could have incredibly advanced surveillance systems, listening and analyzing everything.
So even partnerships that seem totally normal can have this like hidden side when you think about how they could be used. It's like one of those movies where they zoom in on a map and start connecting all these different points.
It is kind of like that, yeah. And that's exactly what we're doing here, connecting the dots. We've got DeepSeek in the middle, and then all these companies around them, some with government ties, all working on tech that could, have huge consequences.
Yeah, this is getting really interesting, but I feel like we've only just scratched the surface here. We got to dig deeper into these connections and really figure out what they mean for DeepSeek and the whole world of AI.
I'm with you. There's so much more to uncover here. I'm ready to keep going.
Welcome back to our deep dive into DeepSeek. And, like we've been saying, this company, their journey is, it's not like a simple path.
Mhm.
It's more like, I don't know, one of those twisty mountain roads with like surprise turns and hidden exits and all that.
It's funny you saying that about the winding road. It reminds me of like how DeepSeek kind of just appeared out of nowhere.
Yeah.
One minute they're this, like nobody started up, and then bam, suddenly they're making headlines with all this cutting edge AI stuff. It's like I don't know, like they hit the fast forward button or something.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It really shows how strategic their rise has been. Remember how we talked about China wanting to be like the top dog in AI?
Yeah.
Well, DeepSeek, they're like a key piece of that puzzle. This quick rise of theirs, it kind of tells you that someone's making a real effort to make them a champion in this whole global AI race. So it's not just that they're a smart company with good ideas, it's that they're part of something bigger, a national strategy, right?
Exactly. It's like a national project.
Yeah.
And that helps explain those weird moves they make. Like that whole thing with hoarding GPUs. Remember, it's not just about like stocking up for later. It's about sending a message. DeepSeek with some heavy hitters behind them, they're here to stay and they're going to be a major player.
Speaking of heavy hitters, the report also mentioned this company, Zhejiang Oriental.
Right.
They're a state-owned enterprise and a big investor in DeepSeek. That seems like a pretty clear sign that the government's interested, right?
It's a huge red flag for sure. State-owned enterprises in China, they often act as like tools for the government to push their policies.
Huh.
So them investing in DeepSeek, it kind of hints that the government sees them as like really important to their plans. It's not like direct control, but it's definitely a way for the state to like nudge them in a certain direction.
So even if we don't have like hard proof that the government is telling them what to do, we can kind of guess that DeepSeek's goals are probably in line with China's AI ambitions.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And those ambitions, they're not just about, being the economic leader. It's about the military side of things, too. Remember that whole military civil fusion thing?
Uh-huh.
DeepSeek working in the HPC sector and having those government connections makes them like the perfect candidate to be part of that whole strategy.
So DeepSeek is developing like cutting edge AI. They've got connections to the government, and they're working in a place where civilian research and military research are basically the same thing.
Yeah.
It sounds like that could lead to some pretty scary outcomes.
And that's exactly why it's so important to figure out where DeepSeek's work could have those dual use implications. The report mentions a few key examples, like remember iFlytek, the speech recognition folks? Well, their partnership with DeepSeek could lead to like super advanced surveillance systems, the kind of stuff we've never seen before.
Right. Yeah, we talked about that. But what about their AI research itself? Like, what are they actually building? What kind of AI are we talking about here?
That's the big question. And it's kind of frustrating that the report doesn't really go into detail about that. We know they're messing around with algorithms for, like image recognition and natural language processing and stuff, but the specific applications, it's kind of a mystery. That's where we got to look beyond this report, Try to find out what's already out there about DeepSeek's R&D.
So like we're missing some pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah.
We see the outline, we see the connections, we see like the potential danger, but we need more information to really get it, to see the whole picture.
Exactly. And that's where things get tricky because information about what DeepSeek's doing internally, their AI models, the data they're using, all that stuff is probably locked down tight. It's a company operating in a country where, well, transparency isn't exactly their top priority.
I mean, yeah, that makes sense. But even without knowing all the specifics, we can still ask some important questions, right? Like, if DeepSeek's AI is being used for, let's say, surveillance, what kind of data are they collecting on people? Are there any like rules in place to make sure it's not being misused?
Those are great questions. And they get to the heart of a really important ethical issue with AI, that whole potential for misuse and losing our privacy. It's not just about DeepSeek. It's a challenge for like the whole AI community,
This is really making me think about the implications of all this, all this advanced technology. We've been talking about government and military stuff, but what about everyday people? How does this affect them?
Yeah, that's a super important thing to consider. Imagine a world where AI-powered surveillance is everywhere, like they're watching your every move, listening to every conversation, tracking everything you do online. It's like something out of a dystopian novel, but it's a possibility we can't ignore.
This is getting pretty intense. I need a minute to like process all of this.
I hear you. It's a lot to wrap your head around. But hey, remember, we're not just here to point out problems. We're also trying to raise awareness, to get people thinking critically and to have these important discussions. The future of AI, it's being shaped right now. So we got to get involved, ask the right questions, and demand that the people in charge develop these technologies responsibly.
Welcome back. Man, this whole DeepSeek thing, It's been quite the journey. We started out talking about partnerships and who they're connected to, but now it feels like we've stumbled into this massive conversation about the future of AI, government power, and all these ethical questions we have to face as technology just keeps like changing everything.
You're right. You're absolutely right. DeepSeek's story, it's like this perfect example of the challenges we're facing as a global society when it comes to AI. We're talking about tools that are incredibly powerful. Like they could change everything from how our economy works to, I don't know, our everyday lives, even how wars are fought.
And all of this is happening in a world where like the lines between governments, companies, and like national agendas, they're all blurry. It's hard to figure out like who's doing what and why and what the consequences could be.
Yeah, it's a real mess. That's exactly why we can't avoid these conversations. We have to keep asking the hard questions, demanding transparency, and making sure that the people in power are, you know, they're developing and using AI responsibly.
Something that's been bugging me this whole time is that we don't really know much about DeepSeek's AI models, like the actual algorithms they're building.
Right.
We know they're doing cutting edge stuff, but what are they specifically building? What are these things supposed to do?
That's the question, isn't it? Unfortunately, like we said before, the details about DeepSeek's research, what they're working on, it's probably a closely guarded secret. They're operating in a place where keeping things under wraps is, well, it's pretty standard, especially when you're talking about tech that could be strategically important.
So how can we even begin to like understand the risks, the possible consequences if we don't even know what they're making? It's like trying to solve a puzzle with like half the pieces missing.
Yeah, it's tough, but we can still like use what we do know to make some educated guesses. We know they're working on AI that has, those dual use possibilities. We know they have ties to the Chinese government and the whole HPC industry. And we know that China wants to be the leader in AI, including, using it for military stuff.
So even without all the details, we can start to see how this could turn into like a really bad situation.
Hmm.
Imagine if DeepSeek comes up with some powerful facial recognition system, right?
Yeah.
In the wrong hands, that could be used to like create a surveillance state on a scale we'd never seen before.
Right. Or imagine an AI that can analyze like tons of data to pinpoint threats or even targets in a military setting that could lead to like autonomous weapons, machines making life or death decisions without any human input.
Yeah, it sounds like I don't like a sci-fi movie or something, but it's becoming more and more clear that this isn't just fantasy anymore, right? This
Yeah.
this could really happen, and the stakes are incredibly high.
And it's not just about, wars or governments getting too much power. We also have to think about what this means for our personal freedoms, our privacy, even our sense of like having control over our own lives in a world that's increasingly run by algorithms.
Man, it's almost too much to think about. So
Okay.
where do we go from here? What can we actually do to make sure AI is developed and used in a way that's, ethical and doesn't
Yeah.
cause harm?
Well, that's the big challenge, isn't it? It's not going to be easy, but we got to start somewhere. I think we need to demand more transparency from the governments and corporations that are, the ones building this AI. We need to talk openly about the ethical side of this tech and push for some kind of, I don't know, international rules or regulations to guide how it's used.
This whole DeepSeek thing it's been really eye-opening. It's made us face some uncomfortable facts about where AI is going and how we make sure it doesn't go off the rails.
Totally agree. DeepSeek, it's a wake-up call, It's reminding us that technology doesn't just develop on its own. We have to be aware of the consequences, think critically, and hold the people shaping the future of AI accountable.
Well said. I think our listeners have a lot to think about after this deep dive. We had beyond the headlines and really dug into DeepSeek, their connections, the risks, and the bigger ethical questions that AI brings up. We talked about the uncertainties, the lack of transparency, and what could happen if this tech is left unchecked. But most importantly, I hope we've shown how important it is to be aware, to think for yourself, and to get involved. The future of AI, it's not set in stone. It's being shaped right now by the choices we make, the questions we ask, and what we do about it. So stay informed, stay involved, and never stop asking those tough questions. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.